Our nation's capital. This is the National Weather Desk.
Good morning and welcome to the National Weather Desk. I'm meteorologist Emily Gracie. Meteorological fall began last Friday, and the Labor Day weekend marks the unofficial end of summer. But Mother Nature doesn't seem to care. More than 50 million Americans are under heat alerts today as the mercury once again soars into the upper 90s. Well, many cities broke records yesterday, and more records are likely to fall today and tomorrow. People still ventured outside in the heat, like here in Washington, D.C. Some pools will reopen past their traditional Labor Day closing day to help keep folks cool. And in Baltimore City, 11 schools will close early today and tomorrow because they don't have working air conditioning. Even Rochester, New York, not exactly known as a summer hot location, is seeing its highest temperatures since July.
I'm very shocked. Last year was not like this.
Like for September to be almost 90 degrees, enjoy.
Well, Rochester is expecting a high today of 92 degrees. Well, from the heat in the Northeast, we turn our attention to the tropics. If you've been following on social media the last few days, you've probably seen some posts about something called Invest 95L, a disturbance in the eastern Atlantic that could pose a threat to the U.S. next week. Now, meteorologist Brian Van de Graaff is here with a look at what could happen. And Brian, we say could very loosely because this thing hasn't even formed yet, right?
Exactly. We're watching it, obviously, very carefully. Been watching it since it came off the coast of Africa. It's this little wave right here in the middle of the Atlantic. There's also two other waves of energy that the National Hurricane Center is watching, but it's this one down here we're paying the most close attention to. 100% chance of development. This would become Lee in the coming days, and this is our spaghetti models. These are all the models plotted out. They could look like spaghetti. They give an idea of where this storm heads. Listen, the Leeward Islands watching this carefully, particularly the northern section of them, as well as Bermuda. Most of the guidance makes a curve, but where that curve occurs will directly impact what portions of North America can or may not see energy from Lee. We'll be watching it carefully, Emily.
All right, thanks, Brian. More than 7,000 people were evacuated from areas of Taiwan after Typhoon Haikui made landfall on the island Sunday. At least 44 people were injured in the storm and nearly 50,000 were left without power. The typhoon has since moved out of the region and cleanup is underway. Well, other storms in the Atlantic are creating riptide along East Coast beaches. John Gonzalez is in Ocean City, Maryland with that story.
There is once again a swim warning here in Ocean City, Maryland, after hundreds of rescues over the long holiday weekend, and not just here in Maryland, but up and down the East Coast. I've been talking to officials here in Ocean City who tell me that it was essentially a perfect storm this long holiday weekend. You had the very busy beaches, big crowds, and you had weather that was nice as far as the skies and the sun, but treacherous water conditions out here, dangerous rip currents, and short-staffed. A beach patrol here in Ocean City that only had about 33 lifeguards on duty for the entire beach, and that created a lot of problems. The captain with Beach Patrol tells me they were even seeing effects of the blue supermoon with an aggressive high tide. Now on Saturday, lifeguards here in Ocean City had over 150 rescues, 230 rescues on Sunday alone, and some of those will continue this week.
A lot of people don't want to heed our warnings, so we had 4 mobile patrols out last night, and a mobile patrol is one of the 4-wheelers in pairs. So there was 8 people out there last night spread along the beach, so that if we did get a 911 call or they saw something, and they actually made rescues last night. Again, had we not been there, these are people that probably would not have survived.
A major mudslide in Utah over the weekend, nearly 5 feet deep, caused problems for people traveling over the Labor Day weekend. Drivers were forced to take an alternative route after the mudslide washed out portions of a major highway. Part of that highway has reopened, but cleanup efforts are still underway. Emma Riley has more.
We weren't aware of it, coming through, but it was relatively quick.
Drivers returning from the Labor Day holiday were met with an unexpected detour on Highway 6. A mudslide washed out 4 feet of the roadway between Helper and Soldier Summit. Both directions of the road were shut down completely Sunday afternoon.
You can see how high the water was up on that opposite bank over there. Just blows our mind.
The water was flowing down Crandall Canyon in the middle of a burn scar from the Bear Fire in 2021. Hinckley says UDOT is in the middle of an almost $5 million project to widen drainage pipes.
We had just a 10-minute span at about 120 to 1:30 where we received 2/10 of rain in that 10 minutes. And that's double the amount of rain that we knew we could withstand based on the burn damage that's up the canyon.
Luckily, drivers that had to take the detour Monday afternoon say they weren't too inconvenienced by it.
It just reminds me of, the thistle thing that happened in the 80s. And I haven't really heard of a landslide that's happened since then.
Highway 6 is now reopened. They are allowing cars to pass through at 25 miles per hour, and UDOT crews will continue working on the road for the next few days.
All right, check this out. That's snow falling on Labor Day. It happened in the Utah mountains about 70 miles from Salt Lake City. The WSA A95, 100 feet above sea level, but it's a good reminder that winter isn't that far off. Well, the exodus is underway in the Nevada desert as 7,000 people are leaving the muddy mess that was this year's Burning Man festival. Thousands of cars lined up Monday for the long drive home. Less than an inch of rain fell over several days, but that was enough to trap festival goers. The thick mud was too much for the tires to grip. Just walking around was a challenge. The mud destroyed tents and camps, and people were told to conserve food, water, and fuel. But now that ordeal is ending.
The roads are still pretty muddy and there's still standing water.
It's a real sloppy mess out there.
We drove out and got stuck. I made one bad decision. It was up to here.
Well, the festival's climax, the burning of a wooden effigy shaped like a man, took place last night, but with a much smaller and calmer crowd than usual. Well, severe storms tore through parts of Nevada over the weekend, causing major flooding that damaged several homes and businesses. Several roads were also destroyed due to the fast-moving floodwaters. Denise Rosh spoke with local residents as they began what is expected to be a long cleanup process.
Oh, no. This is what Shayla LaRosa walked out to Saturday afternoon.
Oh, my God.
The parking lot of her apartment complex on South Nellis near Desert Inn flooded, and her 2017 Honda Accord filling with water.
Up to here.
How quickly did that happen?
It was really fast, to be honest. It was so scary.
Today, LaRosa has removed everything from the car seats to the carpeting, wiping down what she can. A storm, she says, that gave she and her neighbors little warning.
The only reason why I knew is because my car alarm went off. Like, it was like all crazy, and I couldn't get it to stop.
Over on East Bonanza, John Cox spent the holiday shoveling rocks.
We had two rivers going down both sides of the street. It actually covered up the entire street down there a little further. It was bringing dirt and boulders from the mountain, but is also eroding a lot of dirt here on the side of the street.
All of the water coming from the mountain instead of going down the street came in my yard, pulled up in the corner over there.
Chuck Muth was at home when water began flowing into his office casita, the water knocking over a stone wall on his property that had stood for close to 60 years.
I don't know how you replace stone masonry these days. I guess we'll find out once we talk, see if we have insurance. This house has never been in a floodplain, so I'm not even sure if I have flood insurance.
Now that Labor Day weekend has come and gone, eyes in many parts of the country turn to fall foliage. And this year, with this year's extreme weather, it's difficult to predict when leaves will be at their peak color. For example, it's been a very wet summer in New England. That could mean leaves change earlier than usual. For the last decade, SmokyMountains.com, the tourism site for popular national parks, has released an interactive map that can let you get an idea of what colors are going to be like and where the peak is going to be. So this year, they forecast New England will be at a peak by the first week in October, and by the third week, the peak will stretch from Virginia across to the Midwest, but it won't be until early to mid-November when those colors reach the south. Well, coming up on the National Weather Desk, we'll look at why some grape farmers are still feeling impacts from Hurricane Hilary, and we'll find out how wildfires get their names.
You are watching the National Weather Desk.
Well, 2 weeks after Tropical Storm Hillary, there's a better sense of its impact on California crops. Leslie Molina looks at the economic toll this could take on grape farmers.
25 million boxes of grapes is what California farmers are reporting they lost to Tropical Storm Hillary. The California Grape Commission told Eyewitness News they have not seen losses this big since 1994.
So it is a big, significant hit to the industry, to all the rural communities that are supported by grape growing, to the individual companies, to the farm worker community.
1994 was the last time the grape crop was under 75 million boxes of grapes. And now we're seeing it again this year.
Rain is not good for any fruit that is full of sugar. It just, there can be decay.
The unexpected rainfall and high winds damaged the grapes and knocked over several rows of vineyards. 2023's crop total came out to only 71.9 million boxes. It is the lowest amount recorded in up to 30 years. This 25 million box loss is just a fraction of 2023's 71.9 million, around 35%, and still leaves a little over 45 million boxes of grapes the industry plans to ship. These losses will lead to the cost of packaging grapes to be higher. Some companies say they will have to pay farm workers more.
Farm worker, a skilled farm worker who is going in and looking at that bunch and shaping it and cutting out any berries that might have any imperfections. It's going to take longer.
Growers are hoping retailers they sell their grapes to will pay them more to offset the cost. But what will the impact of this be on consumers? Will people see higher prices on grocery store shelves?
It's hard to say. I can't predict the future, but it's quite possible that the prices of grapes go up a little bit. And hopefully, that's good for the growers too, that have just lost, approximately $550 to $600 million of crop.
Well, what do flying monkey, margarita, and beaver nugget have in common? They're all names of Texas wildfires, and this season has been unusually busy due to hot and dry weather. Meteorologist Chicago Windler explains how the fires are named.
A massive fire tore through Bastrop State Park Labor Day weekend of 2011. It was called the Bastrop County Complex Fire, a name folks here won't ever forget.
I was surprised at how much damage had been done. I didn't experience it.
That deadly fire is still considered the most destructive in Texas history, burning more than 32,000 acres, destroying nearly 1,700 buildings and damaging 96% of Bastrop State Park.
It's our second time here. It's beautiful, and we're here to celebrate our 25th anniversary.
Visitors like Anna Mabry see signs of the past, signs of recovery, and signs of the extreme fire danger we're in today.
We can very much see even still remnants of the mature trees that were lost in 2011, as well as the regrowth coming up underneath of it.
Carrie Hines is a program coordinator with the Texas A&M Forest Service. She says the Bastrop County Complex was named for its location in Bastrop County and its origin, 3 separate fires that combine into one large complex. If another fire burned here, it would get a different name.
It is nothing near as fancy as or organized as how we do hurricanes or large storms.
There's no set list and no naming committee.
We have some things that we're supposed to stay away from, like using property owner names or business names, or certainly the cause of the fire if we know it. Don't name it that. But really, it is just what the firefighters are feeling like.
Which explains why a fire was named the Taco Truck Fire.
Well, there's a taco truck nearby that all the firefighters really like going to for lunch.
Usually, fires aren't named after streets, but the Palmer Lane fire in Cedar Park was an exception.
It had an established name, something it was getting referred to. We're not going to change it at that point.
But if the Forest Service arrives on the scene and a fire doesn't already have a name,
Little Dipper, Rocket, Dalmatian, Slowpoke, Sleeping Cowboy. There's some weird ones out there.
Weird, but effective. The goal of naming the fires is to help differentiate one from another for communication and public safety.
Thousands of wildfires, and if you want to be able to refer to them over time and know which one you're talking about, have to have a name you know.
Now you know what's in a name. Southeast of Austin in Bastrop County, I'm Chicago Windler for the National Weather Desk.
A group of scientists have identified a geological site in Canada that marks a new chapter in Earth's history. Sediment cores from Lake Crawford are supporting their idea that the geological timescale has changed and that we're now in an epoch dictated by human impacts. I recently spoke to the lead scientist about this discovery and the historical event that is helping them mark that change.
According to the timescale, currently, we're still living in the Holocene, and that's one of the two epochs of the Quaternary, the Pleistocene, the Holocene. So 12,000 years ago-ish, the end of the last ice age marks the beginning of the Holocene. We, the Anthropocene Working Group, propose that we're no longer in the Holocene, that conditions are so different because of primarily greenhouse gas concentrations in the atmosphere being so much higher than they were. We would propose that we not think of the Earth being in a Holocene mode, but instead being in an Anthropocene mode.
I'm curious how the change in what we're seeing in the atmosphere is showing up in the ground.
Anything that falls out of the atmosphere and accumulates is a kind of sediment, and it records things like pollutants in the atmosphere. So all of those things we can measure, and we have measured, and we found the same thing, that there is a major shift that happened all around the world around 1950. And that's why we feel confident in proposing that a line be drawn on that timescale.
So what is it about 1950 where this change is suddenly and clearly happening?
One of the things that is obvious when you think about it, that falls out of the atmosphere all at the same time within a year or so, is nuclear fallout. The first time that there was the explosion of an atomic bomb in 1945 in the New Mexico desert was the first time that nuclear fallout fell out of the sky. So that's the marker that they started thinking about.
Well, to hear more on this topic, check out this week's episode of Off the Radar. We'll dig deeper into the role of nuclear fallout on that geological timescale, as well as the controversies surrounding the proposed change. You can find Off the Radar anywhere you listen to podcasts. Well, we all know the wonders and beauty of butterflies, but how much do you know about moths? Theron Zahn is here with some fun facts about them.
I've often called moths the butterflies of the night. They're out there doing their job. Can't always see them unless they're attracted to a light. Here's some fun facts about moths you might not know. There are actually 10 times as many species of moths than there are of butterflies. Some moths migrate thousands of miles just to come to your light. And also, some moths can smell from 7 miles away. So next time you see a moth fluttering through the night, you might want to be a little more impressed.
Time now for a short break, but first we'll take in views of the Arizona desert from above.
You are watching the National Weather Desk.
Have you ever heard of a training thunderstorm? Meteorologist Shannon O'Donnell explains what it is.
Lightning strikes all in a row there, captured courtesy of would-be weather guy, better known as Jonathan Pulley, as the storms kept firing up one after the next throughout the course of the day. These are back-building storms. The new cells replace the old and continue to fill in behind them because of the gusty winds here created right near the Olympic Peninsula. They work like the cars on a train, so they keep going over the same location over and over again. As a result, one spot can deal with continuous heavy heavy and dangerous lightning, and also some very heavy rain leading to flash flooding. We had this round of training thunderstorms, again, heading through parts of Puget Sound late in August. You can see how they continued to fill in over the very same location over the eastern side of the Strait of Juan de Fuca and back toward Discovery Bay. Again, loads of lightning, some heavy rain there, while Seattle and Tacoma just had some drizzle. We picked up over an inch of rain over parts of the San Juan Islands and back towards Sequim and Port Townsend. For the National Weather Desk, I'm meteorologist Shannon O'Donnell.
Thanks for joining us. We're in the middle of corn season, and tomorrow on the National Weather Desk, we'll have a look at how summer of wild weather has impacted this year's crop. I'm meteorologist Emily Gracie. Make it a great Tuesday, and we'll see you right back here tomorrow.